Let me ask you something. When was the last time you unloaded your problems onto someone and actually walked away feeling lighter? Be honest. Because most of the time, what happens? You vent, they nod, maybe they give you a half-hearted, yeah, I get it, and then nothing changes. Your problem is still there. And worse, now you've just handed a piece of your weakness to someone who probably doesn't even care. Here's the hard truth most people won't say out loud. Nobody really cares about your problems. They care about theirs. They're busy fighting their own battles, carrying their own stress, managing their own lives. And when you keep telling everyone your problems, you think you're getting support, but what you're really doing is draining your own power, making your struggles louder and your solutions quieter. Think about it. Every time you repeat that story about who wronged you, who betrayed you, who failed you, you're keeping the wound fresh. You're not healing, you're rehearsing pain. And here's the kicker. While you're stuck telling and retelling your problems, the world keeps moving. Nobody's hitting pause on their life to save you. Now, this might sting, but listen closely. The more you complain, the less people respect you. They may smile, they may nod, but deep down they're thinking, here we go again. And you don't want to be that person, the one everyone avoids because all you bring to the table is negativity. So ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped telling the world your problems and started solving them in silence? What would happen if instead of wasting energy trying to make people care, you invested that same energy into action? Because the truth is, no one's coming to rescue you. But you can rescue yourself. And that's where real strength begins. The harsh truth is this. Most people don't care about your problems. They don't. And that might sound cold, maybe even cruel, but it's reality. The sooner you accept it, the faster you'll free yourself from the cycle of disappointment and frustration that comes with expecting others to carry what was meant for you. Think about the times you've shared your problems, pouring your heart out, hoping for someone to truly understand. What did you get back? A nod, maybe a few sympathetic words, sometimes even silence. And yet, deep down, you knew they weren't going to remember what you said by tomorrow. Because here's the thing, everyone is living inside their own storm. Everyone is weighed down by their own set of worries, anxieties, fears, and failures. So when you come to them with yours, you're not getting their full presence. You're just another voice in the background of their already noisy life. It's not that people are heartless, it's that they're human. Their capacity to care is limited, and most of that capacity is consumed by their own struggles. And even if they care in the moment, the reality is they can't carry it for you. They can't live your pain, solve your challenges, or fight your battles. That's your job. And here's the real danger. Every time you lean too hard on others with your problems, you start giving away pieces of your power. You start training yourself to look outward for comfort instead of inward for solutions. You become addicted to sympathy, addicted to someone telling you it's going to be okay instead of making it okay yourself. And the more you depend on others to soothe your wounds, the less resilient you become. You have to understand, people are watching, they're observing how you carry yourself. When all you do is complain, when all you do is broadcast your problems, you don't inspire confidence, you invite pity and sometimes even annoyance. People may smile in your face, but inside they're thinking, here comes the person who always has something wrong. Here comes the person who drains the room. And you don't want that reputation. You don't want to be the person others avoid, because they know a conversation with you is just another therapy session they didn't sign up for. Let me make it sharper. Imagine you're in a workplace. There's one colleague who constantly complains about being tired, about the workload, about how unfair everything is. And there's another who faces the same workload, the same challenges, but instead of talking about it, they push through, they deliver, they find solutions. Which one do you think gets respected? Which one do you think gets opportunities? Which one do you think others want to be around? Exactly. Nobody rewards the person who constantly broadcasts problems. People gravitate to strength, not weakness. Now, some of you might be thinking, but isn't it healthy to share what I'm going through? And yes, in small doses, with the right people, it can help. But what I'm telling you is this. Don't expect the world to care. Don't expect anyone else to fix your life. Don't mistake temporary empathy for real investment. Because 9 times out of 10, after they nod and say, I'm sorry you're going through that, they go right back to their own lives, and you're still left sitting with the same problem you had before. And here's another reality you need to hear. The more you tell people your problems, the more power you give them over you. Because not everyone who listens has your best interest at heart. Some will use your struggles against you. Some will gossip about it. Some will quietly judge you. You think you're unburdening yourself, but in reality, you're exposing yourself. That's why you have to be careful who you confide in, and why most of the time it's better to keep your problems to yourself and work them out in silence. Carrying your problems doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It doesn't mean bottling everything up until you explode. What it means is choosing strength over sympathy. It means building the discipline to face your own struggles without broadcasting them to the world. Because the truth is, the world doesn't reward your problems, it rewards your solutions. People remember results, not complaints. Let me give you an example. When someone achieves something great, maybe they started from nothing, maybe they had every obstacle thrown at them. Do you know what people celebrate? The achievement, the victory. They don't care about the long nights of stress, the tears, the doubt, the failures along the way. Those details fade into the background. What stands out is the end result. And that's the point. People don't care about the struggle, they care about the story after you've conquered it. So here's the challenge for you. Stop expecting people to care about the weight you're carrying and start focusing on carrying it well. Stop waiting for someone to rescue you and start becoming your own rescue. Because the sooner you understand that most people are too consumed with their own lives to worry about yours, the sooner you stop wasting energy on trying to make them care. This realization isn't meant to make you bitter, it's meant to make you free. Free from the need for validation. Free from the disappointment of unmet expectations. Free from the endless cycle of telling, retelling, and reliving your problems without making progress. When you stop expecting others to care, you take back control. You stop waiting for sympathy and start creating solutions. And here's the twist. The less you complain, the less you tell people about your problems, the more respect you'll earn. Because strength is silent. Power is quiet. The ones who impress the world aren't the ones who talk about their struggles endlessly. They're the ones who fight in the dark and let their victories shine in the light. So let this sink in. Nobody owes you care, nobody owes you understanding, and nobody owes you a solution. And that's not a curse, it's a gift. Because it forces you to step into your own power. It forces you to stop looking outward and start looking inward. And when you do that, you stop being a victim of your problems and start being the architect of your solutions. That's the harsh truth, and it's also your liberation. There's a massive difference between venting and victimhood, and most people don't see the line until they've already crossed it. Venting is natural. It's a release valve for stress. It's the way you let out steam when life feels overwhelming, when the pressure builds up inside and you need to let a little out before you explode. But victimhood, that's different. Victimhood is when venting becomes your identity. It's when your problems stop being temporary storms and start being the lens you see your entire life through. The truth is, everyone vents from time to time. You have a rough day, you call a friend, you unload for 10 minutes, and you feel better. Fine, that's human. But when every day is a rough day, when every conversation is another round of poor me, when every friend starts to know you as the one who always has a problem, then you've crossed over. You've stopped venting to release stress and started venting to live in it. That's victimhood. Here's the danger. Victimhood feels comfortable. It gives you an excuse. If you're always the victim, then you don't have to take responsibility for changing anything. You can stay stuck and blame the world. You can tell yourself, life is unfair, people are unfair, nothing ever goes my way, and in a twisted way it feels good because you've justified your inaction. But here's the cost. You'll never move forward. Because while you're busy telling everyone how bad things are, someone else is out there taking action to make things better. Venting can clear your head. Victimhood clogs it. Venting makes space for solutions. Victimhood smothers solutions under endless stories of how hard things are. And when you live in victimhood long enough, people start to treat you differently. They don't see you as strong anymore. They don't respect you anymore. They tolerate you, but they don't admire you. And deep down, that eats at you more than the problems themselves. Let's make this real. Imagine two people go through the same challenge. Say they both lose their job. The first person vents for a moment, maybe to a friend. Man, I can't believe this happened. It sucks. I feel betrayed. I'm angry. That's venting. But then after the release, they say, okay, what's next? What can I do? How do I bounce back? They take action. The second person. They vent and vent and vent some more. Every phone call, every conversation, every post online turns into a story about how unfair life is, how the boss didn't appreciate them, how nothing ever works out. Weeks pass, months pass, they're still telling the same story. And guess what? They're still unemployed, still stuck, still playing the victim. That's the difference. You see, venting is a moment. Victimhood is a lifestyle. Venting is a spark. Victimhood is a fire that burns everything down around you, including your own chances to rebuild. And the more you feed it, the harder it is to escape. There's also a psychological trap here. The more you tell people your problems, the more your brain wires itself to repeat the same patterns. It's like rehearsing pain. Every time you talk about it, you reinforce it. You're not healing, you're making the wound deeper. Venting once can help, but when you tell the same story 10, 20, 50 times, you've stopped releasing pressure and started building a cage for yourself. That's why so many people feel stuck. They're living inside the echo chamber of their own problems. And here's the brutal truth. People might give you sympathy once or twice, but if you keep repeating the same victim narrative, they'll tune you out. Why? Because sympathy has limits. People don't want to get pulled into your cycle over and over. They don't want to spend their lives being your emotional trash can. They want to be around people who are resilient, who face problems head on, who find solutions. Energy is contagious, and if all you bring is victim energy, people will pull away. So how do you avoid falling into victimhood? You become intentional about venting. You set limits for yourself. Maybe you give yourself one conversation to release your feelings. Maybe you write it in a journal. Maybe you go for a workout and sweat it out. But after that, you shift gears. You ask, okay, what am I going to do about it? Because venting without action is just complaining. And complaining without action is victimhood. Another key difference. Venting acknowledges the problem, but leaves room for a solution. Victimhood magnifies the problem and blocks the solution. Venting says, I'm hurting right now, but I'll figure it out. Victimhood says, I'm hurting right now, and that's who I am. Do you see the difference? One is temporary, the other becomes permanent. And let's be clear, you're stronger than that. Life is unfair. People will hurt you. Situations will break you down. That's reality. But what defines you is not the unfairness. It's what you do with it. Do you sit in it forever, or do you stand up, brush yourself off, and move forward? That choice is yours, every single day. Here's the real kicker. Nobody respects a victim. They might pity you, but pity doesn't get you anywhere. Pity doesn't open doors. Pity doesn't build opportunities. Pity doesn't attract the right people. Respect does. Strength does. Solutions do. And the fastest way to kill respect is to drown people in your endless problems without showing any progress. So let me challenge you. The next time you feel like venting, ask yourself, am I venting to release or am I venting to avoid? Am I venting so I can clear my head and move forward? Or am I venting because I want someone else to carry my pain for me? That question alone can change everything. Because here's the truth, you don't need to make your problems everyone else's story. You don't need to rehearse your pain to feel validated. And you definitely don't need to live in victimhood. What you need is action. What you need is resilience. What you need is to take that energy you'd spend complaining and invest it into solutions. Stop confusing venting with healing. Stop mistaking victimhood for identity. You are not your problems. You are not your setbacks. You are not your struggles. You are what you choose to do about them. Venting is human. Victimhood is optional. And the choice is yours. Your problems don't define you. That's the truth most people never hear because they let their struggles become their identity. They wear their pain like a badge. They introduce themselves through their hardships, and after a while, they forget there's a whole person behind the problem. But here's what you need to understand. Your challenges are chapters, not the whole book. They're moments in your story, not the definition of who you are. Too many people let a problem, divorce, debt, betrayal, failure, loss become the headline of their life. I'm the one who got cheated on. I'm the one who lost the business. I'm the one who grew up without a father. I'm the one with anxiety. They repeat it so many times that it becomes the way they see themselves, and eventually it's how everyone else sees them too. And that is dangerous, because the more you repeat the story of your problems, the more you trap yourself in them. You stop looking for a way forward and start living as though your life ended at the moment your problem began. But listen carefully. Your problems are experiences, not identities. They shape you, yes, but they do not define you. What defines you is how you respond. Do you rise or do you collapse? Do you learn or do you repeat? Do you let the problem cage you or do you use it as a stepping stone to something greater? That choice is always yours. Imagine this. Two people face the same hardship. Say they both grew up in poverty. One person clings to it for the rest of their life. Every conversation, every excuse, every failure is rooted in "I grew up poor. That's why I can't succeed." They've let their problem become their definition. The other person? Same beginning, same poverty, same pain, but they use it as fuel. They don't deny it, they don't ignore it, but they refuse to let it define their ceiling. They take that pain and turn it into drive, into hunger, into fire. And guess what? One is stuck telling the story of their problem. The other is busy writing a new story with their life. Same problem, different definition. That's the key. You get to decide how your problems live inside you. Do they become permanent labels or temporary lessons? Do you let them control your narrative, or do you rewrite the script? The world will try to box you in by your problems, but only you decide if you stay in that box. The danger of letting problems define you is this: you shrink yourself down to the size of your pain. If you failed once, you start calling yourself a failure. If you were betrayed, you start calling yourself unworthy of trust. If you lost someone, you start calling yourself broken. Those labels are lies. They're shortcuts your mind uses to explain pain, but they are not the truth. The truth is you are more than what happened to you. You are bigger than what broke you. You are stronger than the worst thing you've survived. Let me be blunt. People respect results, not excuses. If all you do is tell people about your problems, that's what they'll know you for. But if you turn those problems into fuel, into growth, into victories, that's what people will remember. Nobody looks at a successful person and says, "Oh, that's the guy who failed 10 times. They look at him and say, "That's the guy who made it." Nobody looks at a strong woman and says, "That's the woman who was betrayed." They look at her and say, "That's the woman who rose after betrayal." The problem might be part of the story, but it's never the headline unless you choose to make it one. And here's something to think about. Every time you introduce yourself through your problems, you train the world to see you through that filter. You keep reminding people of your weakness instead of showing them your strength. Why would you give anyone that kind of power over you? Why would you walk into a room already smaller than you are? Don't introduce yourself by your scars. Introduce yourself by your victories. Let the scars show you've survived, but never let them define who you are. You see, life doesn't stop throwing problems at you. That's guaranteed. Pain, betrayal, loss, failure, they're all part of the human experience. But if you allow each of those moments to define you, then you're constantly stuck in the past. You never evolve, you never grow, you never see beyond what hurt you. But if you learn to see problems as chapters, temporary, passing, shaping but not permanent, you give yourself permission to move forward. You give yourself the gift of a new identity, one that isn't chained to yesterday's struggles. This is why silence is powerful. When you stop broadcasting your problems, you stop letting them define you in the eyes of others. When you face them in private, when you carry them with dignity, when you focus on solving them instead of narrating them, you shift the story. People stop seeing you as the person with problems and start seeing you as the person with strength. And more importantly, you start seeing yourself that way too. Let me make this clear. You are not your divorce, your failure, your heartbreak, your trauma. You are not your mistakes, your weaknesses, your setbacks. Those things may be part of your story, but they are not who you are. Who you are is the person who keeps moving forward despite those things. Who you are is the person who refuses to be defined by what went wrong and instead defines yourself by what you will build next. So the next time you're tempted to lead with your problems, stop. Ask yourself, am I letting this moment define me? Am I letting this pain become my identity? And if the answer is yes, make a decision right there to change the story. Because the truth is, problems are temporary. But if you let them define you, the damage becomes permanent. Your problems don't define you, your response does. And if you want to be remembered, respected, and truly free, you have to stop telling the world who hurt you, what broke you, or how unfair life has been. Instead, show them your resilience, show them your strength, show them what you've built in the ashes. Let your victories define you, not your problems. Because the world doesn't need another victim. The world needs another example of what happens when someone refuses to be defined by their pain. And that example could be you. Here's the reality that nobody likes to admit. People might give you sympathy once, maybe even twice, but after that, it runs out. Sympathy is a short-term currency. It buys you a moment of attention, a pat on the back, a hang in there, and then it's gone. Why? Because people have their own lives to run, their own storms to weather, their own struggles to manage. They can lend you their ear for a moment, but they won't carry your burdens for you. And they shouldn't. Because at the end of the day, your life is your responsibility. What actually moves you forward isn't sympathy, it's solutions. Think about the last time you unloaded your problems on someone. Maybe they comforted you, told you it wasn't your fault, reassured you that things would get better. It probably felt good in the moment. But then what? Did the problem disappear? Did their words suddenly erase your pain or fix the situation? No. Because comfort doesn't solve problems, action does. The hug fades, the words fade, but the problem remains. And that's where most people get stuck. They confuse feeling better for a moment with actually being better. Sympathy is emotional sugar. It gives you a quick rush, but it doesn't nourish you, it doesn't build you, and if you rely on it too much, it actually weakens you. Solutions, on the other hand, are protein. They may not taste as sweet at first, they may be harder to swallow, but they're what make you stronger. They're what give you the strength to stand on your own 2 feet instead of always leaning on someone else. Here's the truth. People respect solutions. People admire resilience. People are drawn to strength. And if you want to be taken seriously, if you want to be respected, if you want to actually change your circumstances, you have to stop chasing sympathy and start chasing solutions. Sympathy might make you feel good temporarily, but solutions change your reality permanently. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine 2 people go through the same setback. Say they both get rejected from a job. The first one calls all their friends, tells the story over and over. They didn't give me a fair chance. I did everything I could. It's not right. Their friends comfort them. They say you're amazing. They don't know what they're missing. The person feels validated, even supported, but at the end of the day, they're still unemployed. The second person, they take a deep breath, maybe vent for a minute, and then they start asking questions. What can I do differently next time? Where else can I apply? How do I sharpen my skills? Within weeks, they're in a new role, moving forward while the first person is still replaying the rejection. That's the difference between sympathy and solutions. And here's something critical to understand. The more you rely on sympathy, the more you train yourself to be helpless. Because when you expect someone else to always comfort you, you stop developing the tools to comfort yourself. You stop building the resilience to bounce back. You stop growing the toughness that life demands. And so, the next time you hit a problem, and you will, you're just as unprepared as before, maybe even weaker. But when you rely on solutions, every problem makes you stronger. Every obstacle becomes a training ground. Every setback becomes a lesson that makes the next challenge easier. The world doesn't care about how much you complain. It cares about what you produce. You think people remember the times you struggled? They don't. They remember the results. They remember the comeback. They remember the success. Nobody applauds the story of your suffering. They applaud the story of your survival. And the way you write that story is through solutions, not sympathy. Now, this doesn't mean you have to harden your heart completely. It doesn't mean you can't ever share, or that you have to bottle everything inside. What it means is that you have to be intentional. If you're going to vent, let it be short, let it be purposeful, and then move on to action. Don't live in the cycle of feel sorry for me. Live in the cycle of watch what I build from this. Because people may nod at your pain, but they'll stand and clap for your perseverance. It's also worth pointing out that too much sympathy can be dangerous. Why? Because it keeps you stuck. When people keep telling you it's not your fault or you did your best, you start believing it's okay not to change. You get comfortable in the comfort. But comfort zones are traps. They keep you from growing, from stretching, from evolving. Sometimes, the best thing that can happen is that people stop giving you sympathy, because that's when you finally face the reality that it's on you to find a way out. And let's be honest, people respect those who take responsibility. Even if it wasn't your fault, even if you were wronged, even if life threw you something unfair, the moment you take ownership and ask, okay, what can I do about it? You separate yourself from the crowd. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for someone to save them. Leaders, winners, survivors, they save themselves. They don't sit around hoping for someone to care enough. They get up and do something about it. So the next time you find yourself tempted to call 10 friends and repeat the same story, stop. Instead, grab a notebook, write the problem down, then brainstorm 3 possible actions you can take right now to move closer to a solution. And here's the key. Take one of those actions immediately, even if it's small, because momentum matters. Action breaks paralysis, and the more you do it, the less you'll need anyone else's sympathy. You have to decide, do you want people's pity, or do you want their respect? Do you want temporary comfort, or do you want permanent change? Do you want to be seen as the person who always has problems, or the person who always finds a way through? That decision will shape how you handle every challenge in your life. At the end of the day, sympathy fades, solutions last. People might hold your hand when you fall, but they won't carry you forever. You have to learn to walk again, to rise again, to move forward on your own. And when you do, you'll find that you don't need sympathy anymore. You'll have something better, strength, So stop chasing sympathy. Start chasing solutions, because that's where your power is. Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of power you will ever possess. In a world that's constantly loud, people oversharing, venting every detail of their lives, announcing every heartbreak, every setback, every problem, silence has become rare. But make no mistake, silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is discipline. Silence is control. And when you learn how to master it, silence becomes your greatest weapon. Most people can't handle silence. They feel the need to fill it with words, with explanations, with justifications. They want everyone to know their side of the story, everyone to feel their pain, everyone to validate their emotions. But when you do this, when you constantly tell people your problems, your fears, your insecurities, you give away your power. You hand it over like it means nothing. And whether you realize it or not, the more you talk, the more ammunition you give people to use against you. Think about it. The moment you tell someone your problem, what happens? They may listen, but they also now know your weakness. Maybe they judge you silently. Maybe they use it later to diminish you. Maybe they talk about it to others when you're not in the room. You gave them a piece of yourself that you can't take back. That's the cost of speaking without thinking. That's the danger of oversharing. Silence protects you from that. Silence keeps your cards close to your chest. Silence forces people to wonder instead of giving them the satisfaction of knowing. And here's the irony. When you stay silent, people think you're stronger. They assume you're in control. They assume you don't have problems, or if you do, you've got them handled. Silence creates an aura of strength, even if you're struggling on the inside. But when you constantly broadcast your problems, people stop seeing you as strong. They stop taking you seriously. They see you as fragile, as weak, as someone who's always in need of a shoulder. And eventually, they'll tune you out completely. Silence isn't about bottling everything up. It's about choosing wisely what you share, and with whom. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every problem deserves an audience. When you're selective with your words, you become intentional. And intentional people are powerful because they're not ruled by impulse. They're not reactionary. They're in control. Let's take an example. Imagine you're going through a major setback. Maybe you lost your job, or a relationship ended. Most people rush to announce it to the world. They post cryptic quotes online. They tell everyone who will listen. They make sure the story spreads. Why? Because they want sympathy. They want attention. But what they don't realize is that they're lowering themselves in the eyes of others. People may pretend to care, but behind closed doors, they're judging. They're labeling. They're saying, there goes another one who couldn't handle it. Now flip the scenario. You lose your job, but you don't broadcast it. You go quiet. You regroup. You put in the work behind the scenes, and months later, you show up in a new role, stronger, sharper, better than before. That's the power of silence. While everyone else wasted time talking, you were building. Silence also creates mystery. And mystery is magnetic. People are naturally curious about what they can't figure out. When you don't reveal everything, when you don't spill your struggles, people lean in. They want to know what's going on with you. They wonder how you stay calm under pressure, how you manage when life gets hard, and that curiosity builds respect, because in a world where everyone is desperate for attention, being silent makes you stand out. There's another layer to silence that most overlook. Silence gives you space to think. When you stop talking, you start listening to others, to yourself, to the situation. You gain clarity that you can't get when you're busy complaining. Talking about your problems over and over doesn't solve them, it just keeps you emotionally stuck. Silence, on the other hand, allows you to step back, analyze, and strategize. It gives you the mental room to create solutions instead of rehearsing pain. But silence requires discipline. It's not easy to keep your struggles to yourself when you're hurting. It's not easy to resist the temptation to run to someone for validation. It's not easy to let people wonder instead of giving them answers. But every time you choose silence, you build strength. Every time you resist oversharing, you train yourself to rely on your own resilience. And over time, that discipline compounds. You become unshakable. Here's the truth. The loudest people rarely have the most power. The strongest ones move in silence. They don't announce their struggles. They don't broadcast their plans. They don't seek sympathy. They show up with results. They let their success speak for them. And when they do speak, people listen because they don't waste words. Their silence makes their voice more valuable. So the next time you're tempted to tell someone your problems, pause. Ask yourself, is sharing this going to move me closer to a solution, or am I just giving away my power? Is this person capable of helping me, or am I just chasing sympathy? And if the answer doesn't serve you, stay silent. Use that energy to focus on the problem, not the performance of telling it. You don't owe the world your struggles. You don't have to explain your pain. You don't have to let anyone see you weak if you don't want to. Your silence is your fortress. Protect it. Guard it. Use it as a weapon, because silence builds power, and power is what will carry you through when sympathy runs out. At the end of the day, your strength won't be measured by how many people you told your problems to. It will be measured by how you overcame them without needing an audience. Remember this, lions don't roar when they're hunting. They move quietly, strategically, and with precision. And when the job is done, the results speak for themselves. Be the lion. Let your silence build your power. Let me leave you with this. Life isn't fair, and people don't exist to carry your burdens. They are too busy carrying their own. The world doesn't stop for your problems, and it doesn't hand out rewards for how loudly you complain. It rewards action. It respects resilience. It admires those who rise without needing applause, sympathy, or validation. Stop handing out your struggles like flyers to anyone who will listen. Stop diluting your strength by turning your problems into your identity. You are not your setbacks. You are not your heartbreaks. You are not your failures. You are what you do after. You are the way you rise. You are the choices you make when nobody's watching. The harsh truth is this: no one really cares about your problems, but that truth is not meant to break you. It's meant to free you, because once you accept it, you stop waiting for people to care, and you start caring enough about yourself to take action. That's where real power lives. So walk out of here today with one commitment: no more begging for sympathy, no more broadcasting weakness, no more rehearsing pain. Choose silence when it serves you. Choose action over excuses. Choose solutions over complaints. And above all, choose to define yourself not by what happened to you, but by what you built from it. Remember this: strong people don't need to tell the world their problems. The world can see their strength through how they live. Be that person. Be unshakable. Be undeniable. Be unstoppable. Your problems don't make you. Your response does. And if you want to win in this life, stop telling people your problems. Start showing them your power.